Hey everyone, Hatter here, and welcome to episode 3 of Dissecting Zeta Gundam. This episode marks Zeta's tonal shift from adventure toward tragedy. It's light in the way of actual events, but it sets up a lot of character building moments and probably establishes Kamille's biggest rivalry throughout the series. Spoilers ahead, let's jump in. Okay, I promise this is the last time I bring up 0079. Maybe. But isn't it fascinating that the third episode of Zeta Gundam opens with a brief primer on the asteroid Luna 2 that the Aeug and the Argama are approaching, while the third episode of 0079 opens with a brief primer on the asteroid Luna 2 that the White Base is docking at. Now, I will say the biggest difference here is that the White Base was fleeing to Luna 2, while the Argama is actively trying to avoid Luna 2. Again, it serves to show how much things have changed in the last 7 years. Here we are introduced to Lila, an aggressive Federation pilot that seems to be itching for a fight. Her dialogue seems to offend the captain of the Bosnia battleship since she undermines him with her assertions. In just a couple of lines, she proves to be an enigmatic female character that we can expect more from going forward. Of the 10 or so important female characters in this story, Lila is easily the most self-assured, and true to form, she's already showing it. The next scene opens with Bright Noah, looking much worse for wear, taking orders from Bask Olm. Both Bask and Jamaicon are rubbing salt in the wounds of Bright, who shows a great deal of stoicism in taking orders and resisting provocation. Now this is a far cry from the bold and cunning commander of White Base as we left him. Perhaps he's turning the other cheek for the sake of his family on Earth. Maybe he's out of sorts without Mirai by his side to guide him. Whatever his motives are, Bright shows a great deal of endurance to bear the physical and verbal abuse of the Titan's officers. Next, we see Kamille meeting the officers of the Aeug, Captain Henkin and Commodore Blex. There's an odd localization change that honestly doesn't add or take away much, but it paints Henkin as more of a joker than someone who's concerned about Kamille's safety. In the subtitled version, Henkin comments about Kamille's Gundam leaking air, and not knowing what Kamille would have done. The dub is corny, but it makes more sense in context, with Henkin cracking a pun about breathing in the green Noah underground. It's not a huge change, but it's an interesting one that was seemingly made for no reason. In this meeting, Kamille takes on a self-deprecating tone, suggesting that it was luck that allowed him to help steal the pair of Gundams, while Blex assures him that talented people make their own luck. Already we see Blex as an idealistic figure with much more optimism than Quattro has. This is an important detail because if Quattro represents the brains of the Aeug, then Blex definitely represents the heart. And it's not exaggerating to say that without Blex, the Aeug loses its way. Lila launches in her Garibaldi to conduct what basically amounts to a traffic stop when the captain of the Bosnia accuses her of warmongering. She doesn't deny the claim either, she just says with resignation that she'll have to prove herself some other time. Now it's hard to say what she could mean by that, as if she hasn't already proven herself a capable pilot. Lila so far is a very interesting woman with bold, assertive qualities and yet a healthy appreciation for authority and protocol. We'll come to learn a lot more about Lila in the coming episodes, but for now we simply see her as a tough pilot that is clearly more than meets the eye. Commodore Blex seems willing to bet heavily on the odds that Kamille is a new type that is sympathetic to the cause of the Aeug. Henkin teases Quattro about sensing Camille's new type abilities, which is a subtle clue that Henkin knows Quattro's true identity, but there's no telling which other Aeug members know that he is Char Aznable. Quattro conducts an impromptu interrogation of sorts on Kamille in the halls of the Argama, first asking about the rumored Titan's battleship, and then about the Gundam Mark II itself. In this short talk, Kamille reveals that his mother is also an engineer, which further informs Camille's familiarity with mobile suits. He also tells Quattro of his father's plan to adopt more Zeon technology into the Federation mobile suits. Now this isn't a major plot thread, but it does help explain the visual appearance of the Hyzax, as well as many of the other Titans mobile suits going forward. Many of them bear a strong resemblance to the mobile suits that Zeon used in the One-Year War, from smooth, round armor plating to the iconic mono eyes. Camille's parents are brought to the Alexandria warship to aid in recovering the Gundam Mark II. Already Hilda Bedan thinks that something is fishy since she's not a combat engineer but rather a materials specialist. She goes along despite this, presumably because she's trying to help Kamille stay out of trouble, but oddly enough she doesn't bring up Kamille at all in this short scene. Lila stops the Argama for inspection and Quattro launches to intercept. This is a short battle, but one that shows how tough Lila is to face off against Char one-on-one. We get to see Camille's parents bickering aboard the Alexandria, and a lot of Camille's inner turmoil starts to make much more sense. Hilda, obviously hurt by Franklin's infidelity, takes the easy opportunity to throw his affair in his face. and deservedly so. But let's not let Franklin's misdeeds overshadow the brief line where he says he's thinking about Basque in worried tones. Is there more going on here? Franklin seems to understand that Basque is not a man to be trifled with and maybe suspects that they're already in danger. His temper gets the better of him anyway, and he slaps Hilda. It's clear where Kamille's lack of impulse control comes from. Rekoa helps Kamille get his spacesuit on, and this is the first we really get to see of her. We know that later on she becomes a much more complex character and probably one of the more disliked characters in the series, but in this moment she seems content to help look after Kamille. The big takeaway here, though, are the sustained gazes that Kamille aims her way, and the way he chases after her like a puppy. It's clear that he's already somewhat smitten with her. With the Argama's engine damaged after the battle with Lila's team, Jamaicon briefs a team of Titans pilots on their mission to recapture the Gundam Mark IIs. Emma inquires about the mysterious capsule that Jamaicon mentions, and she's so naive about the nature of the Titans that she doesn't think twice about the contents of the capsule. Could it be a toxic gas like the kind that Zeon used at Side 2 during Operation British? Why are they even deploying an explosive device for a negotiation? Despite this, she proves to be a reassuring presence and a natural leader the way she steps up and addresses the other pilots regarding their first real mission. Emma demonstrates herself as a smart and capable pilot, and yet has an innocence that's incompatible with the Titan's ruthlessness. Emma approaches in a Gundam Mark II, waving a white flag to call for a ceasefire. Quattro comments on her bravery for coming aboard the Argama alone in order to deliver a handwritten letter from Captain Basque. Despite being a Titan's pilot, Quattro and everybody aboard the Argama seem to regard Emma with no small amount of respect and admiration. They can tell that there's something different about her from the other Titans. While walking the halls of the Argama, Emma and Kamille exchange a brief glance. While Emma keeps up her poker face, Kamille stares back wide-eyed and repeats her name like he did back on Green Noah. Emma is probably still a little annoyed with Kamille for having stolen the Gundams in the first place, while Kamille sounds surprised that she was the one chosen to negotiate with them. It's a short and subtle nod to the new type connection that these two have and will continue to have as they develop. Commodore Blex balks after reading Basque's letter, to which Emma lets out an indignant sigh. Quattro looks for approval before handing the letter back to Emma to read for herself. Again, Blex is showing how optimistic he is that Emma would object to Basque's use of Camille's parents as bargaining chips. I imagine that a more cynical commander would assume that a ranked Titans officer wouldn't be bothered by such a tactic. But like we saw before, the AUG seem to intuitively know that Emma is not like an average Titans pilot. After reading the letter, Emma remains defensive about the Titans, claiming that there must be some mistake. It shows what a loyal person she is, even if her loyalty in this instance is misplaced, according to her own values. She does concede, however, that she wasn't assigned to Basque unit by choice, which shows some uncertainty about where her allegiances lie. After Kamille hears the news that his parents have been taken hostage, we get a quick glimpse into what I think is the dividing line between new types and old types. Blex and Henkin agree that they should not concede to Basque's demands, while on the other side of the room, Quattro and Rekoa would rather find an alternative way. Rekoa in particular is visibly taken aback by Blex's willingness to sacrifice Camille's family. I know Rekoa gets a lot of heat for her actions throughout the story, and believe me, I'll have some critique thrown her way, but when looking at moments like this, it's easy to see how she doesn't see a difference between the AUG or the Titans in their willingness to do harm. Jared proves to be somewhat of a useful idiot in this case. His orders are to destroy the capsule, which we'll come to learn contains Camille's mother, if the enemy tries to capture it. But it doesn't make sense in the current context of what we know. If it were a bomb, as Emma suggested it may be, why would they deploy it so close to where it could be captured? Why couldn't they just detonate the bomb remotely? None of this plan makes much sense if you don't know what Basque's plans are, yet Jared just goes along with it. He's not a malicious guy by nature, like we saw he even went out of his way to avoid crashing the Gundam into a civilian area, but he doesn't question authority, and it results in him making things worse for himself by way of picking a fight with Kamille. Camille's last words to his mother, although not spoken directly, are filled with frustration. "This is always the case. You're always doing this to me. What are you doing out here?" To Kamille, this is another in a long line of perceived transgressions by his mother. And we were all 17 once, and we've all taken parents for granted, which could be what's happening here. But given that we saw Hilda come to try and bail Kamille out before, after his fight with the Titans, I think we're seeing a pattern of behavior that Kamille doesn't want his mother always trying to help. Maybe he feels that his mother getting him out of trouble undermines his manhood. As we know, Kamille is severely insecure about his masculinity due to his name, another thing that he probably blames his mother for. It's easy to see how Kamille could have so much resentment for his mom, but I think Tomino uses this moment to illustrate how important it is to not say something you'll regret. As we know from 0079, some things you can't take back, especially if the person you would apologize to is gone. Even without understanding what just happened, Jared comments about feeling uneasy. Maybe it's the stillness and quiet afterwards, since everyone else knew that Hilda was in the capsule, or maybe even an old type can feel the resonance of a soul leaving its body. We haven't gotten any indication that Jared is a new type, so it's not likely that there's a new type effect that we're seeing here. We close with a scene in which Kamille cries out in anguish at the loss of his mother. Surely it's not just grief, but regret at his own shortness with her that we're seeing. It's as if he never suspected that the Titans would actually execute his parents. So that's it for episode 3. We're left with a cliffhanger following the death of Hilda Bedan, and Emma has a crisis of conscience to deal with. We also have a couple of new enemies to watch out for that have ambiguous motivations, to say the least. If you guys dig this series, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you later.